Hey, what's up guys? Matt here with Fix Anything Save Money. Today we are going to be showing you how to replace the carburetor on this Echo GT 225 trimmer. You can see the model number right there, maybe. It's right on the back, GT 225. So we're going to be showing you the step-by-step procedure to replace the carburetor on this and get your machine back up and running. So reasons you might want to replace the carburetor is if it's starting and not, continuing to run, it's bogging down, it's, if you've had bad gas in it for a long time and it's just not running the way that it used to, probably the most likely culprit is a bad carburetor. So we're gonna be showing you how to replace that with this kit from a company called Hypa. And they make carburetors and other various small engine parts for Echo trimmers, a whole bunch of different makes and models of trimmers, push mowers, snow blowers, a whole bunch of different stuff. Chainsaws, they make a bunch of carburetor parts for. So be sure to check them out on their website. I'll put a link on where you can access their website. But here is the replacement carburetor from them. And these kits that they provide are great because they're affordable and you get not only the carburetor, but you get kind of a tune-up kit as well. So you get a replacement air filter, you get the whole fuel line assembly, and then you get, the gasket for the carburetor, a spark plug, and they even give you an extra little priming bulb. So I highly recommend you check out this company. All their parts fit really great. I've never had an issue with fitment on any of the machines that I've worked on, and I've used their parts for a long time now. So we'll dive right into this video. This is going to be a pretty short one because there's not much to these, but there is a couple little steps that I want to show. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is remove this cover just by rotating this counterclockwise. Okay, and this is a good time to clean up anything in here. These get pretty gunked up. Okay, so now we have access to the air filter housing. And you can see this one didn't even have an air filter in it. So we're going to be using the replacement that Hypa sent, and they go in just like that. So we're going to pretend like that was in there when we remove the cover. This is most likely what you're going to be looking at. So we'll just remove that. And then the three tools we're going to need for this, we're going to need a T25 driver. We're going to need the smallest flathead you have in your toolbox. I like to use, a really skinny flathead for removing the fuel lines, and then a 10mm wrench. So I'm not going to be showing you the fuel line replacement or the spark plug replacement. Or even the fuel filter, because that's all connected to the fuel line. I'll probably show that just in a separate video, just so that this video isn't crazy long. Okay, so now that we have the air filter out, all we're going to do is take our 10mm wrench. We're going to remove these two bolts, but first I want to loosen this throttle cable right here. You can see that nut right there. So this is going to be easier to do if we just loosen this nut up a little bit first while everything is together. So we're just going to loosen this just a tiny bit so that we can remove this later. Okay, so now that we have this loosened, we're going to go ahead and take our T25 and remove these two bolts, rotating them counterclockwise. Okay, and then you could just kind of hold everything in place, because I like to leave these bolts in this plastic housing and inside of this clip right here. Okay, so you can see what that all looks like, and again, this is a good time to kind of clean all this stuff up. Okay, so now we have this loose, our carburetor's loose, and we loosened this already, so we could just push this up like that, and then we could go ahead and remove our throttle cable, and I'll give you a better look at that real quick so that you're not confused on this, because this is probably, if there is going to be a question, it might be on this. Okay, so this comes up, this little handle, you just pull that up and you could slide the cable in and you want it to sit in there just like that. So then when we want to remove it, we're just going to slide it up and then just kind of take it and remove it like that. And then now that this nut right here is loose, we could just remove that and kind of put it to the side, wherever you want to put it. And now the only thing that's holding our carburetor on is our fuel lines. And this is where our skinny flathead is going to come in handy. So I just want you to take note on the placement of these fuel lines and what they are. So this right here, this is just a breather tube right here. And then this black fuel line, this goes down through this rubber grommet into the tank, and it attaches to the fuel filter. You can see what it looks like out. So this black line comes down, and this sucks fuel out of the tank and pushes it into the carburetor. And then this yellow line, that's just our overflow. So any excess fuel in the carburetor just comes out of here, terminates, you know, the line only goes about a ½ inch into the tank, and it just dumps fuel back into the tank. So you can see where it's sitting. This line right here is on this side of the carburetor, the black line, and then our overflow is right there. Okay, so now we could just take a flathead and pry these off. There's one, and you just want to pry them off right at the base. There's two. So there's our old carburetor. And then you also just want to inspect your fuel lines. Make sure they're not leaking, or make sure there's no cracks or they're not dry rotted. These look like they're still in great shape. Okay. So here's our old one. We're going to set that off. And then we're going to take our new one, just like this. We're going to hook everything up in reverse. You can see it looks a little bit different, just pretty much the color of that plastic piece on top is different. But other than that, they're the same. Okay, so now we're just gonna hook everything up the same way we took it off. So this yellow line is gonna go onto this nozzle right here on the front. Yellow line right here. Push that up as flush as you can get it to the base. Then we're gonna take our black into this other nozzle right here in the front. Just like that. Okay, and then we could go ahead and hook our throttle cable back up. Again, just pulling on this lever right here and kind of fitting it into place. Okay, and you could see on this little ring that's slotted that you slide it into, this rotates, and this part right here has a hole in it. It looks like a circle, and then this part right here is just slotted. So you want to fit this into the piece that has the hole in it. So the hole on it, the hole inside should be on this side, so that this sits in there and it doesn't come out. If you do it the other way, it's just going to pull right out. Okay, give that a little pull, make sure it's in there good, and then we could just fit that in there, and we'll tighten that down later. Okay, so now we have our fuel lines on. We have our throttle cable hooked back up. All we're going to do now is take our bolts inside of our cover here, put them through our carburetor like that. And then the very last thing we're going to do is take our new gasket. We could take this old one off. You could see how it's all old and kind of melted on there. We're going to take our old one off, and we're going to put our new one on just like that. So I like to put it over the bolts first, and then that way when you go to put it into here, you know you're not going to have any issues. Okay, so then just kind of fit that all into place. Hopefully you can see that on camera, but I pretty much just sandwiched all this together, and then I'm just putting it into these two. I'm putting the bolts into these two holes right here. And then we're just going to take our T25 and start them. And so the problem with this trimmer in particular was it was starting and then it was stalling right out. And no matter what I did, no matter what adjustments I made, I couldn't get it to work. So most likely probably the diaphragm inside the carburetor was going bad or bad. Okay, so now that we have these tight, we could go ahead and tighten down this cable here. So you could just kind of rotate that until it's snugged up, and then take your wrench and just tighten it down the rest of the way. Okay. And then you just want to pull your trigger, make sure that it's operating freely, which it is. Okay. And then all we're going to do is put our air filter back on. And then we're going to put our cover back on, just like this. You can see the little instructions for the choke right here. So it goes on just like this. Okay, we tighten that down by hand. And now this trimmer uses a 50-to-1 fuel mix ratio. So that pretty much sums up how to change the carburetor on this. Like I said, you would put a 50-to-1 fuel mix in, you know, prime your bulb on this side right here. You would prime this bulb right here about, you know, 10 to 15 times or whatever until, you know, your carburetor is loaded with fuel, and then have this pushed up. You would pull the cord, you know, however many times until it kind of cold starts and then shuts off, and then you would flick it down to run, pull it, and then it should start and run. And I always recommend just letting it warm up for a couple minutes, just so you don't put any unnecessary wear and tear on your engine. And yeah, guys, that pretty much sums up the video on how to replace the carburetor on this Echo GT225. If you guys have any questions at all, be sure to reach out in the comments. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Otherwise, if this video helped you out, be sure to give it a like. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Check out all of my other tool and DIY videos. I'm also going to be putting a video up on how to tune this up, which is just replacing the spark plug and the fuel line. So if you want to check that out, be sure to. That's going to be up in a couple days. And yeah, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.